bagi kita semua. Perkenalkan, saya Clarissa Ratusima Arifi, staf ahli dari Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup, Eksekutif Mahasiswa Universitas Brawijaya tahun 2021. Pada kesempatan hari ini, saya berada di Citarum, New York, bersama dengan Sam Bencheghib, seorang aktivis asal Prancis, dan juga co-founder dari media company Make a Change World. Bonjour Sam, comment ça va aujourd'hui?
Bonjour, merci beaucoup de m'inviter pour ce podcast.
Et merci beaucoup pour cette opportunité, pour cette interview. Bien, je dois vous dire que en fait, ça fait un bon bout de temps que je vous suis en ligne et je ne crois pas que j'ai enfin l'opportunité de vous voir dans la vraie vie. Je vous ai préparé quelques questions pour cette interview parce que je voulais partager votre parcours dans l'écologie et dans l'activisme environnemental pour inspirer mes camarades en Indonésie. Et dans ce cas-là, je crois que ce serait mieux si on continue cette interview en anglais, si ça vous va.
Bien sûr, merci.
Well, thank you. So let's continue this interview in English. So in 2017, you and your sibling first blew up on the internet for shining a spotlight on the plastic pollution problem in Citarum River. Could you tell us more about that?
Sure. So this was an incredibly eye-opening experience for me. I grew up in Bali, in Indonesia, and we saw plastic pollution in our faces every day. The beaches are covered in plastic, but what most people don't know is that 80% of plastic in the ocean comes from just 1,000 rivers. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, let's Google what is the most polluted river in the world. And we found out that river was actually the Citarum River in Java. And we thought, what is the craziest thing that we can do to raise awareness about the state of this waterway and hopefully inspire change, hopefully inspire people to reduce their use of plastic. So we decided to build these kayaks out of 300 plastic bottles each. Mm-hmm. And go down the Citarum River for 2 weeks. We documented our journey and released the videos on Facebook. And we were super surprised to see that overnight they got 50 million views through Facebook. And what was amazing was that it wasn't just 50 million people, but it was actually seen by the Indonesian government.
Yes.
And that was really the most exciting thing. As an 18-year-old, my brother was 20 at the time, and we thought maybe we would get our friends to stop using plastic or maybe inspire a few people here and there. But it was amazing to see the government response to our videos, and in turn we went to Jakarta 2 weeks after the expedition, and the Minister of the Environment we set up a camera and we interviewed him, and he said, as a result of your videos, I'm going to create an emergency plan. Mm-hmm. And we were like, what? We went down this river and now this person is creating an emergency plan. The country of Indonesia is acting, so super proud that 4 months after our descent, we actually met with Pak Jokowi, who told us that he was hiring 7,000 soldiers to clean the Citarum River over the next 7 years. And I have an on-camera interview where I'm holding the camera and my brother's asking Pak Jokowi, do you think this river is ever going to be clean again? And he says, Gary, you will see, in 7 years, the Citarum will be the cleanest river. And so that was just incredible to see the work of Jokowi and the work of the Indonesian military and the government's response and how they've been dealing with it already. We're seeing huge changes in the quality of the river. That was a long-winded answer, but
and that is such an amazing impact that you had as an 18-year-old. How did that experience change your perspective in life in any sort of way? We can see on the screen right here, there are actual people living right beside that river, right? How did it change your life after seeing those people living alongside that polluted river?
I think that's a great question. That obviously, the river is really polluted, which is hard to see because the environment is being trashed, and this trash goes right into our ocean where it's virtually impossible to collect it. But what was really eye-opening to me was that 17, the numbers they vary based on obviously who you're counting, but millions of people live on the riverbanks of the Citarum River, and they unfortunately rely on this river to live. So it's where they fish, it's where sometimes they wash their clothes, and so that was very eye-opening to see. And although the negative aspects of it, obviously there's the health impacts that result as of this, but what's amazing is that they're really taking a stand now, and they're really acting with the governments. Not only is the government taking action, but the local community is super driven to make the river clean. And so if it's changed me in any way, I would say it's humbled me, but it's also made me realize that we don't have a lot of time. This is like the Chernobyl. It's like the world. I mean, when you go down this river, you feel like the world is dying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, it's so sad because so many, more than 15 million people rely on this water to live, and so it just made me, I guess it motivated me to keep doing the work that I do and to try to come up with ways to raise more awareness and clean more rivers.
Yeah, and what made you interested or concerned about the environment at first?
So it was, like I said earlier, growing up in Bali and seeing the beaches completely polluted in plastic. And at the time, I was 12 years old with my brother and my sister, and we thought, what can we do? And we realized we have 2 hands, we can just pick up the trash. And so that's what we did. Every weekend we picked up the trash, but we quickly realized that so much of that trash comes from rivers. And so we completely switched our efforts to cleaning rivers being the main focus, but also on education and on raising awareness and on speaking to as many people as possible and utilizing social media as a weapon to reach the masses, and the camera to film everything and show these shocking visuals to the United States, to people that don't necessarily see the state of the Citarum River.
Did you ever imagine that your beach cleanups with your family would later escalate into this media company that you've got going on right now, this platform with this huge impact that it is?
Definitely not. And I think if it's taught me anything, it's that don't be afraid to try, and don't be afraid that it's not going to work. And if you believe in something strongly enough, persistence is key. And I think that, when I was 12, when I was 12, I was like, let me clean the beach so I can play on it in 3 hours. Not, let's clean the beach and we're going to create a media company in 6 years. Like, that was definitely not within even the realm of possibilities.
Right, and you are now known to come up with crazy and ingenious campaigns. You went kayaking down the Citarum River with 2 kayaks made out of recycled plastic bottle. Last year you went running through America, right? And I want to know what's running through your mind when you are thinking about these campaigns. What is your thinking process?
Yeah, I think the first question I ask myself is, how can I bring as much attention to this issue as I can? And usually, because I love sports and I love adventure, I try to come up with the craziest idea. So what is the craziest idea that I can come up with that will get people's attention? And how can I tie it back to the issues that I'm passionate about? So for me, kayaking down the Citarum was, I want to see it for myself. And also, what is an interesting way, if you will, that will catch people's attention. And so kayaking down on plastic bottles, the same materials that pollute the river, was my way of doing it. And then last year, I was studying here in the US. I went to university here in Pennsylvania, and I realized, this is just as much of a problem in Indonesia as it is in the United States, except that in the United States, we have good waste management. Mm-hmm. And we have recycling as a really strong infrastructure. But I thought, I need to do something here, and what's the craziest thing that I can do? I'm going to run from New York to Los Angeles, 5,000 kilometers, on shoes made from 11 plastic bottles. And so that, was 6 marathons a week. And along the way, I would speak to schools, I'd meet with politicians, just to start the conversation with everyone, just potentially, hopefully, inspire people to live more sustainably.
What would you say are the guiding principles that have been essential to you throughout your journey and that are needed behind the scenes of your campaigns?
That's a great question. I'd say the first one is to think big. We have to think big if we want to create change. And by that, coming up with ideas that are outside of the box. So running across the United States might not be for everyone, but there's other ways to think big.
Of course.
I'd say the second thing is to collaborate, and you can never change the world alone. And by using your network, working with people already in the field, finding out what they're doing is a really strong tool to create change. And then to be persistent, to never give up, and although you may fail and fail and fail, to get up and just keep doing it. And I think those are the three guiding principles that I really believe in.
Right, absolutely. You mentioned persistence. I have to admit that as a young person in 2021, it is getting harder and harder to keep up hope and to keep being optimistic about our future, especially since no matter what, no matter how hard we try to lower our environmental impact, there are still going to be mega corporations out there that are facing no consequences or accountability whatsoever. First of all, what do you think about that? And how do you keep being persistent? How do you maintain your motivation and energy to keep doing what you do?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're now living in a time where there's so much negativity, there's so much hate. Obviously, with coronavirus and everything else going on around the world, it's really, really difficult to stay hopeful and stay persistent. But that's why I like to look at, and I'm a very optimistic guy, I guess that's the nature of who I am, but I like to look at the solutions.
Right.
I don't like to look at the problem. When you look at the Citarum River, you think the world is dying, but then you gotta think, what are the solutions? Why don't we just place a barrier in this river and stop all this plastic and work with local communities to clean it up every day? What are the solutions that we can do with this trash? What can we do with this trash? Well, we can recycle everything. What we're finding with the project we now have in Bali, which is Sungai Wash, which is essentially that, to place barriers in rivers around Bali, is that we're finding value in all of the trash we're collecting. So we're turning trash into gold by literally going through the simple process of washing it, sorting it, shredding it, and then with the shredded plastic you can make a chair, you can make a table. And so looking at the solutions, I think, is a good way of going around the fact that it is hard to keep hopeful. I guess that's an easy thing to say and harder to do, but there are solutions out there and there are people doing amazing work, and so looking at them and trying to find hope from that.
Yeah, and that is definitely a very needed advice for other young environmentalists out there that are starting to lose hope in the face of adversity. Yourself, how do you see yourself both as an individual but also as an entrepreneur in the next 5 to 10 years in the scope of global activism and sustainable development? What projects or goals do you have in mind?
I'm always thinking about what is the next big adventure.
Yeah.
Do you know the song Sedang?
Yeah.
So there's obviously this really famous song in Indonesia, and I really want to. So I've now kayaked, I've now run, I've sailed. We built a boat and we sailed around Bali with reclaimed wood to really analyze how much microplastic particles are in Bali's water. So enter the more scientific approach of how much trash is in our ocean. But I've never biked and I've never swam. So maybe the next big adventure will be a bike ride. And my brother came up with this idea, but maybe we'll bike from Sabang to Merauke.
Wow.
And cross 9 of the biggest islands in Indonesia with a bamboo bicycle and do it to work with local communities in those 9 islands to clean their rivers. That's an idea that I have. I don't know if it's going to happen.
They seem so fun, and I look forward to see them in the future.
Yeah.
In celebrations of World Environmental Day, do you have any last words you'd like to say to our friends in Indonesia? Maybe a few words in Indonesian if you can.
Oh, I wish I could. My Indonesian is really bad. I'm actually going back in 3 weeks, and I'm really excited to learn and speak fluently because right now my Indonesian is really, really bad. But I guess, we now live in a world, like you said, where it's really difficult to find hope, and there's so many things that we can do as individuals, whether that's reducing, your single-use plastic consumption, or finding groups around you that are doing amazing things, and to really volunteer as much as you can. But, it really just starts with one small step. and it may be very difficult to, or it may seem, like this huge problem when you look at plastic pollution as a whole. But if you take it one step at a time, and you take it one house at a time, like convince your parents to stop using plastic, or find alternatives that are available out there, and then from there you can change the community, you can change the village, you can change the country, and then you can change the world. And I think if you start small, then that's a good step to fighting pollution. But terima kasih banyak for having me.
Thank you so much for being a guest in today's podcast. Je vous remercie encore une fois d'avoir participé à cette interview et j'espère avoir inspiré beaucoup d'autres gens avec votre histoire. Merci beaucoup.
Merci à vous, merci de m'avoir reçu ici. Je sais qu'on est à New York et qu'on est loin d'Indonésie, mais je pense que même ici aux États-Unis, il y a tellement de choses à faire. En France, il y a tellement de choses à faire.
Bien sûr.
Mais en tout cas, merci beaucoup de m'avoir eu et merci de partager ça avec votre université.
Bagi penonton yang ada di Indonesia, terima kasih banyak. Saya Clarissa Ratusima Arifi di sini bersama dengan Sam Bencheghib, pamit mengundurkan diri. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.